Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, Operation Rising Lion continues with strikes on military and nuclear sites across Iran. Iran retaliates with strikes at Israeli civilian locations. President Trump announces a decision coming about further U.S. involvement. Plus, analysis from IDF Reserve Major Elliot Chodoff and Jeff Balabon from the ACLJ. And one man's harrowing account of a missile attack and how God saved him and his family. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. The countdown is underway. President Trump has announced a time frame of 2 weeks for making a decision about joining Israel in attacking Iran's nuclear program. Meanwhile, Israel is continuing its strikes on Iranian military and missile sites and working to protect its civilians from retaliatory attacks. Here's the latest on these and other stories. The Soroka Hospital in Beersheba took a direct hit. One of the doctors there stated, "Just yesterday, we evacuated the old surgical building that took a direct hit today. It's a great miracle." As Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz put it, these are the most severe kinds of war crimes, and Khamenei will be held accountable for his crimes. Katz described Israel's new goal, destabilize the Ayatollah regime. Meanwhile, in Washington, President Trump has approved the Iran attack plans, but is holding off on giving the orders, according to the Wall Street Journal. Speaking to reporters in the Oval Office, Trump says he's not looking for a fight with Iran.
But if it's a choice between fighting and them having a nuclear weapon, you have to do what you have to do. We're not looking for a ceasefire. We're looking for a total, complete victory. Again, you know what the victory is. No nuclear weapon.
In an address to the nation Wednesday night, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked the president for standing by Israel and told Israelis the goals of the war.
We've embarked on this operation to eliminate two existing threats to the state of Israel, the nuclear threat and the ballistic missile threat. We're moving step by step towards eliminating these threats. We control the skies over Tehran. We're striking the Ayatollah's regime with tremendous force. We're striking the nuclear weapons, the missiles, the headquarters, the symbols of the regime.
Despite the attacks, Ayatollah Khamenei remains defiant.
The Iranian nation will stand firmly against the war imposed on it, as it has done so far. It will also stand firmly against imposed peace. The Iranian nation will not surrender to anyone aiming to impose anything on it.
Yet the Israel Defense Forces are now expanding their target list.
During the strikes, we struck more than 20 targets around Tehran. These targets belong to the regime's military industries and security apparatus.
That includes the regime's centers of power. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz told the Iranian people it's time to rise up and overthrow Khamenei's regime. He said symbols of power are being bombed and collapsing, from the Broadcasting Authority and soon other targets, as masses of residents flee. This is how dictatorships fall. Iranian-American journalist Lisa Dattari tells CBN's Raj Nair the people of Iran have long endured a brutal dictatorship.
This is not just since October 7th. This is not just since Friday. This is something that has been building up in the Iranian people for 46 years. They're sick and tired of it. You know, to see someone who is hanged because of a Facebook post or because they are a journalist or an athlete or a dancer. This is the life and the reality that they have been living.
Earlier this week, Netanyahu told Israeli Channel 14, history is being made.
We're at a historic turning point, and everyone is slowly turning to realize it. After victory over Iran, a new Middle East will emerge.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt delivered the president's message.
Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks.
Early today, an Iranian missile struck a residential building in the Israeli town of Beersheba. On Thursday, Iran hit a hospital in the same town and a residential neighborhood in Tel Aviv. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the site of the hospital.
We're targeting military sites. We're targeting nuclear sites. We're targeting missile sites. They're targeting a hospital. In this hospital, there are patients who are immobile. They can't even move. Right next to it is a children's ward, a baby's ward, infants. They target it.
The IDF suspects at least one Iranian missile carried multiple warheads or cluster bombs. That could create a problem for Israel because missiles with multiple warheads can pose a more difficult challenge for air defense systems like Israel's Iron Dome. The IDF continues to destroy Iranian missile launchers many times just before launching. Netanyahu addressed whether or not President Trump will decide to enter the war.
President Trump will do what's best for America. I trust his judgment. He's a tremendous friend, a tremendous world leader, a tremendous friend of Israel and the Jewish people.
Netanyahu added the U.S. is already helping a lot in defending Israel by helping to destroy incoming Iranian missiles, drones, and UAVs. Meanwhile, Israel continues its relentless bombing campaign, including hitting the Iraq heavy water reactor. Military expert, former IDF Major Elliot Chodoff marvels at what the Israeli Air Force has accomplished in less than a week.
This is unprecedented, and it's not a word that I use lightly, because it was not only taking out their air defense capability, but much more the complete clearing of what is the only battlefield today, which is the air battlefield. And so this is a one-front air war that we've never really seen anything like this in the Arab-Israeli conflict, but nothing on this scale where we, once again, have basically cleared the skies for the Israeli Air Force that's operating at will over Iran, allowing us to pick and choose our targets and damage and destroy them at will.
But Chodoff believes Israel may still need what the U.S. has in its arsenal to destroy Iran's deep underground nuclear facility at Fordow, including bunker-busting bombs and the planes to carry them.
The one thing that Israel absolutely does not have is the strategic bomber capability that the B-2 and even the B-52, but certainly the B-2 provides. Somebody asked me recently, why doesn't Israel build its own bunker busters? And the answer is because we don't have any aircraft that can carry it.
In the U.S., crowds celebrated in New Jersey as former Israeli-American hostage Idan Alexander came home, a little over a month after he was released from captivity in Gaza. But for now, here in Israel, the goal of wiping out Iran's nuclear program remains the top concern. The White House says Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a couple of weeks if Ayatollah Khamenei gave the go-ahead. Now Israel and the world await President Trump's decision on potential U.S. involvement. Coming up next, the big picture about Operation Rising Lion from Reserve Major Elliot Chodoff. Decades of military experience inform Reserve Major Elliot Chodoff's analysis. Here's more from our conversation about how Operation Rising Lion is proceeding. Elliot Chodoff, you're a major in the IDF Reserves, a political and military analyst, and also host of the podcast Conflict Uncovered. Here we are about 6 days into Operation Rising Lion. Tell us your assessment of what Israel has been able to accomplish so far inside Iran.
Well, beyond all military expectations, first and foremost, and I think the most important opening step was taking out a major swath of the Iranian military leadership, which was done primarily in the first strikes, but in a few following, and at the same time eliminating and continuing to grind down, because it's not completely gone, the air defense systems of Iran that were already very heavily damaged in the two counterstrikes that we had after the two Iranian missile attacks over the past year. So the combination of no real coherent leadership left for the Iranian defense system and no surface-to-air capability basically has opened the skies of Iran, far beyond anything the Israeli Air Force would have anticipated. If you had asked, I think, the planners a month ago, they would have seen us doing what we're doing, where we're doing it today.
How would you've been in the IDF more than 30 years, and you're a student of history. How would you liken this to other battles that Israel and wars that Israel has fought over the years?
Well, obviously, the initial strike recalls the Six-Day War, the opening airstrikes against the Egyptian Air Force that basically eliminated that Air Force and gave Israel free rein to operate on the ground in Sinai, followed later by strikes against the other Arab countries' air forces. But this is unprecedented, and it's not a word that I use lightly, because it was not only taking out their air defense capability, they didn't have much of an air force to begin with, but much more the complete clearing of what is the only battlefield today, which is the air battlefield. And it pains me greatly as a ground forces officer to say this, but the Air Force is performing brilliantly.
How important is it for Israel to destroy the nuclear facility at Fordo?
Very important. Even if this leads to regime change, and I'm hopeful that it does, it seems to be moving in that direction, but there are too many variables to predict at this point. But any sort of nuclear weapon capability left behind remains a danger. So the full elimination of anything that the Khomeiniist regime, which is what this is, has developed over the past decades, really needs to be eliminated, eradicated.
So here we are in about a week into Operation Rising Lion. What do you see ahead?
Well, first of all, there are two big questions that I can't answer. I can kind of guess at one, and I won't even try to guess at the other. American involvement, if America does step in and get involved, at least with the heavy bombers, that will simplify and shorten the air operation, and certainly be very much to Israel's benefit. And the other question is, will the Iranian opposition rise up and try to overthrow the regime and do so successfully? Right now, there's a lot of noise about it, but there's been no action. So that's unpredictable. If they do it, and I hope they do, and they do it sometime in the reasonable future of the next week or so, then this operation is over. We congratulate them and hope for the best going forward.
Well, Elliot Chodoff, thanks so much for joining us for your military analysis. Very much. Thank you so much. When we come back, a spiritual perspective on Israel's war with Iran from the ACLJ's Jeff Balabon. A large part of Jewish culture involves awareness of the times and seasons and the biblical calendar. Jeff Balabon from the American Center for Law and Justice joined us yesterday to talk about the special date it was on the Jewish calendar and how some say it holds meaning in terms of Israel's war with Iran. Take a look. A lot of people are talking about the 23rd of Sivan in the Bible, in the book of Esther. What is it and why so significant?
Well, Chris, today on the Hebrew calendar is the 23rd day of Sivan, and a lot's been going around because, as we know, the story of Esther takes place in ancient Persia,
modern-day Iran.
Correct, where an evil decree to wipe out the Jews is taken by our enemies. And today's a significant day because a couple of months before this in the Jewish calendar, according to the book of Esther, Haman is vanquished. Haman is killed, but the decree still exists, and the King Achashverosh, we call him, Ahasuerus, I've heard it's pronounced also, but Achashverosh, tells Mordechai and Esther, a decree of the king cannot be reversed, but I'm going to give you my signet, and you can make up whatever you want. A couple of months go by, and it's today in the calendar. And today's the day, according to the Megillah, they call the story of Esther, they call in the messengers and the scribes. The scribes write a new decree that the Jews can rise up against their enemies and vanquish their enemies, and then the messengers are sent out to the 127 provinces. Now, one question is, why do they wait so long? And one answer is, potentially, well, this is a pivotal change because, it's a huge kingdom, empire, 127 nations. So let's say you went from Susa in Persia to far India or to Nubia, And then you got another message a month later saying, no, it's been reversed. You know it's not true, because the king tells us the kings can't be reversed. But they gave a different one, but they used the same messengers. They waited until those messengers, according to some commentaries, came back to Susa to say, we did our job, and now Mordechai and Esther said, good, now we want you, the same messengers, to go to the same places so that they know this message is true. Yeah. So it's a very special day, obviously, and as is our wont here in Israel, as you know, we look to the Bible for clues about today.
For sure. So here we are, about 2,500 years later, and now we're at a pivotal moment in the battle against modern Iran, but ancient Persia. Is there a parallel here?
Well, I believe that it's very hard to, it's hard to look at the Bible and know this kind of a prophecy directly for what we mean to do today. But if we look at the story of Esther, the message to me is clear, which is to say, this is a day when something great happened, a pivotal moment of change. It still was not the end of the resolution, it was a moment of change, where a new decree became evident and was sent out to the world. I think the message is the same that it always is from the book of Esther, which is each one of us should know that we're here in this world with a purpose. And it's always a time such as this for every individual. And so I would say it's good to revisit the story, to recognize that what each of us can do in our own way. By the way, I will say this, I don't know if this is a Christian thought, but it's a very Jewish thought. You know, famously, the book of Esther, God's name never appears. So it's behind the scenes. However, if you look, it uses two different words for the king. The king, sometimes the king and then his name, Achashveros, okay? There's a Jewish tradition that if you read the book of Esther, and every time it says King Achashverosh, it means the human king. But every time it just says the king, you insert the concept that it's talking about God, and the whole story makes perfect sense. It makes even better sense. So I would say revisit the book and recognize that God's behind everything. Thank God the people of Israel seem to be recognizing that God's behind their army and the war and the amazing, so far, God willing, continued success of the IAF. Yeah, here we are about a week into Operation Rising Lion. Talk about that exactly. How are the people of Israel feeling about this in light of God's hand? Well, what's so extraordinary to me, and which is why people wonder, I'm here, I could be in America, I go back and forth. It's like there's something extraordinary today to see at moments of such immense magnitude of significance and importance, when yes, it is difficult, it's exhausting to be here, the sirens keep on going off and people have to run to the shelters and terrible things are happening, but it seems to be acknowledgement across the board, quote secular, unquote, to religious, right, non-observant to observant, that God's behind everything. And it's such an overwhelming sense here. We've talked about this before, how the soldiers in the army, they'll put on special religious garments, the fringes to go to the war, even if they think they're not generally religious, they're doing that. Or they'll keep the Sabbath. So there's a notion that God's behind anything. And Chris, when we read the story of Esther on Purim, we always end with a blessing right afterwards, and the blessing is exactly this, that we read this and we thank God for always being the one who saves us, who wages our wars, fights our battles. And yes, it may look on the surface that this army is doing it, but this army recognizes overwhelming that God's behind it all. Yeah, what a great spiritual perspective on what's happening here right now. Jeff Balabon, thanks for bringing your perspective. Up next, a miraculous survival. A young father recounts how his family survived a missile attack. Our next two stories from CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl give a snapshot of the challenges some Israelis are facing. In this first story, one survivor shared about a missile attack his family endured and how he sees God's hand in it all.
During a missile barrage early Saturday morning, Ariel Levin Waldman and his family headed to the bomb shelter, not knowing what to expect.
At about 5 a.m, I got an alert on my phone. The alert said, get to a shelter. You're in extreme danger of missile fire. And I run downstairs, grab my wife and kids. My mother-in-law was on the way down, and we had gotten our way into the bomb shelter in the basement of the house. The door was still open because we were waiting for her father to come down as well. And that's when the missile hit the house. There was this flash of light, loud boom, and everything went black.
Suddenly, the air filled with dust and concrete, making it difficult to breathe.
We were all screaming. My wife was screaming, my kids were screaming, my mother-in-law was screaming, and I'll be honest, I was screaming too, because not exactly in the best headspace and we were all panicking, but guess I recovered first from the screaming because I realized that if I'm hearing screaming, I'm still alive.
Ariel had his phone in the shelter and called the police. But with his family choking and likely injured, he realized they couldn't wait for rescuers. A damaged bookcase had trapped his mother-in-law.
It was pinned to the wall and covered in blood. So I threw my kid, my little one, the 7-week-old baby, over my shoulder and lifted the cabinet off of her with one hand and tried to make a way for my wife and my kid to get out of the shelter.
As they exited the shelter, a voice called out to them.
Apparently a firefighter. At the time, I had no idea who it was because there's so much dust and I wasn't exactly seeing things clearly. But he leads us up to the stairways of the basement.
As he climbed out with glass in his bare feet, Ariel handed his baby to a rescuer so he could get out. There, his family's 2 cars lay buried under the rubble.
A bit of a chaotic time because in the moment that I turned back to help my wife with the other kid, the paramedic had taken my baby to paramedic station into the streets and had no idea where she was. And people see me covered in blood and dust walking down the street in a daze screaming, "Where's my baby? Where's my baby?" And I think they thought the worst.
Ariel, who works at Sheba Medical Center, said the hospital helped them out right away with more than medical attention.
All of our worldly possessions, credit cards, our clothes were all smithereens. Actually, that's where Sheba Hospital was very important. They gave us clothes, they gave us some toys for the kids, they got us started again.
Less than 24 hours after that strike, they had another close call at the hotel where they had been taken.
The building in question, the hotel, is right across the street from the Weizmann Institute of Science, which took a direct hit from a missile and blew out all the windows at the hotel. That was not good for my nerves, to say the least.
And 4 days later, rescue workers pulled their dog Svika out of the rubble alive. Still, he knows who saved them.
When I say that we are only alive by the grace of God, I mean that because there's no luck, there's no physical explanation that I can imagine for us taking a direct missile hit and all 6 of us being alive at the end of it. Statistically, physically, I don't understand how. Somebody does not want me dead yet for whatever purpose and has stuff to do in this world. I don't know what it is yet, but whatever, I'm going to do it.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
As Iranian missiles began falling in Israel last week, CBN Israel took action by bringing hope and help to Israelis who had lost their homes and possessions. Here's our report from Bat Yam.
The city of Bat Yam, south of Tel Aviv, became one of the first cities hit as Iran inundated the area with missiles. The strike caused one building to collapse, sheared another in 2, and damaged apartments for blocks.
We know that our enemies tried to target civilians, but this is why starting tomorrow we're going to rebuild this area. We have 75 buildings that took a hit.
Nearly 800 people were made homeless by the hit of one Iranian missile. The Israeli government does all that it can to help, but the needs are enormous. Because of you, CBN Israel is stepping up to help.
We were in touch with the Ministry of Welfare here in the city of Bat Yam, finding out where we can help and what we can do. And we're going to be helping to evacuate residents, specifically those with disabilities and the elderly, to a hotel in the country, in a safe place in the country, until they can get back on their feet.
CBN Israel Communications Director Nicole Jansezian told us people have needs beyond government assistance.
We're going to help with the people who fall between the cracks and get them a place to live for who knows how long.
Jansezian explains how quickly the devastation impacted this community.
They have nothing. They can't even go back into their houses. I heard somebody pleading with security, just let me in. I just need to get something. I mean, all their memories, and all their belongings just gone in 1 second.
Within hours, CBN Israel helped those displaced from their homes gather whatever they could salvage and took them to a hotel in another city. CBN Israel is also offering counseling for those dealing with trauma.
Immediately after the attacks started on Thursday night, Friday morning, CBN Israel opened a hotline for people who need trauma counseling, need somebody to talk to, get some kind of counseling or care.
Work towards a resilient center will go on despite the ongoing threat of missiles.
But we will be running it virtually as we already have it off the ground, just to reach out to people who need that kind of support immediately.
She says CBN Israel wants to meet needs as quickly as possible, as well as helping victims recover from trauma over the long term. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Bat Yam, Israel.
Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Please keep praying during this critical time that God would protect Israel and the peace of Jerusalem, that He would thwart the plans of evil men and make a way for all the hostages to come home safely. I'm Chris Mitchell, and for all of us here at the Jerusalem Bureau, we'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.